The hall was a symphony of impossible sights. Light bent around floating platforms where delegates from 100 species shimmered, clicked, or whispered. The air itself hummed with a low-grade translation field, a technological marvel that turned the buzz of insectoid mandibles, the scent-based poetry of the floral geth, and the color-shifting skin of the aquatic Nemo into something resembling universal standard. Kim Jun sat in the human delegation's modest tier, his fingers tracing the smooth, cool grain of the ancient oak desk before him. It was a piece of earth, a stubborn bit of organic matter in a room of polished alloy and light. He found its solidness comforting. Across the vast chamber, the massive, segmented form of Ambassador Kyver of the Vreen Collective dominated the main speaker's dais. The Vreen were a hive-mind species, each individual a node in a greater intelligence. They valued efficiency, logic, and the cold math of cosmic survival above all else. Kyver's voice, when it came, was not a sound but a direct vibration in the translation implants of every attendee, dry and devoid of inflection. The data on the species-designated Chul is conclusive and tragic, Kyver stated. A holographic projection bloomed in the center of the chamber. It showed a planet of stark beauty and obvious violence. Gray, the salt mountains clawed at a smoky sky. Continents were scarred with fresh, glowing lava flows. Their homeworld, catalogued as P787, is in its terminal geological phase. Tectonic stability is non-existent. Major extinction-level seismic events occur with a frequency that precludes long-term settlement. The image shifted to show the Chul themselves. They were bipedal, vaguely humanoid, but their skin had a dusty, mineral quality, like granite. They were shorter than the average human, with sturdy, compact frames. Their faces were expressive, with large, dark eyes that seemed to hold the patience of mountains. The hologram showed them carving intricate patterns into cliff faces, communicating by striking the stone with specialized tools, creating complex vibrational songs. The Chul, Kyver continued, have adapted to this chaos with a unique, rock-based culture. However, their biological lifespan is brief, barely 60 of their planetary cycles. Their physical resilience, while notable for their environment, is below the median for spacefaring species. Most critically, their cognitive patterns are inextricably tied to geological time and physical permanence. The concept of leaving their world, of existing on a ship or a colony that is not stone and bedrock, is culturally anathema. The psychological cost of uplift would be catastrophic. The resource investment required to evacuate a population of millions from a planet actively trying to kill them is, by the consensus's own Resource Efficiency Act, untenable. A murmur, a ripple of light and sound, flowed through the assembly. Heads of various shapes and sizes nodded. It was terrible, yes, but it was logical. The galaxy was vast, but resources for rescue were not infinite. Tough choices had to be made for the greater good of the civilized whole. The Vreen Collective, Kyver concluded, therefore moves to enact Denial Protocol 7 on the species, Chul of P787. They are to be declared non-viable for integration. All observation posts will be withdrawn. Their system will be marked for avoidance. They shall live out their remaining time in peace, unaware of the stars they will never touch. The motion was seconded by the silicon-based crystalline entente. A vote tally began to glow on screens around the room. Column after column lit up in the cool blue of assent. Da-Chun felt a cold knot tighten in his stomach. He looked to his side, where Choi Yuna sat. Her eyes were fixed on the hologram of the Chul, watching one of them carefully, lovingly, add a new line to a vast mural carved into a canyon wall. Yuna was younger than June, her expertise in xenolinguistics and cultural semiotics. She had been the one to first decoded the basics of Chul vibrational speech. She had called it the Song of the Stone. June, she whispered, her voice tight. They're not just carving art. That's their history, their laws, their identity. It's all in the stone. To leave is to become silent. June nodded slowly. Humanity's seat at the galactic consensus was still new, still probationary. Their own history a litany of wars, climate disasters, and near self-annihilation was a source of quiet condescension from elder races. They were seen as impulsive, emotional, dangerously erratic. Speaking now was a risk, but silence was unthinkable. He pressed the button to request the floor. A soft chime sounded. The voting paused. Every eye, sensor, and photoreceptor in the room turned toward the human tier. The attention felt like a physical weight. Ambassador Caver, esteemed delegates, June began, his voice calm but firm in the echoing silence. Humanity wishes to speak against this motion. A wave of subtle displeasure, a flicker of dimmed lights from the Entente, a dismissive rustle from the avian K-Cree. Caver's head tilted, a gesture of pure analytical curiosity. On what grounds, Delegate Kim? The data is irrefutable. The data measures cost and viability, June said. It does not measure value. It does not measure the worth of a song that has been sung into stone for millennia. Sentiment, Caver vibrated, the word carrying a faint hint of the vreen, equivalent of contempt. A resource more dangerous than any scarcity. The consensus cannot be run on sentiment. It leads to wasted energy, misplaced priorities, and the drowning of many for the sake of a few. June stood up. He knew he looked small, a solitary figure of flesh and blood against the grand alien tapestry of the convocation. We are not talking about sentiment. We are talking about precedent. What is the purpose of a civilization, of a community of civilizations, if not to extend a hand to those in the abyss? Our own records show that a pre-FTL Earth was observed by other species during several of our own extinction-level crises. No hand was extended. We were, by your own older protocols, deemed non-viable. We clawed our way out of the dark alone. It left a mark on us. It taught us that the only answer to "they cannot be saved" is "we must try anyway." He gestured to the hologram, now frozen on the image of a Chul elder, its gnarled hands resting on a finished carving. You see their attachment to stone as a rigidity that makes them unfit for the stars. We see it as the foundation of their soul. You see a short lifespan as a deficit. We see a people who have built a lasting culture in the face of perpetual transience. That is not a weakness. It is a profound strength. To deny them a chance, to simply turn off the lights and walk away, is not logic. It is a moral failure. The silence that followed was absolute. It was not a silence of consideration, but of stunned disapproval. Finally, Caver spoke. Delegate Kim, your passion is noted, and it is precisely why your species' judgment on such matters carries limited weight. Your argument is based on an emotional reaction to suffering, not on a strategic assessment of galactic stability. The motion stands. The voting resumed. The blue columns of assent filled nearly every slot. A few races abstained, their icons glowing yellow. Only one icon glowed a solitary, defiant red, the symbol of Earth. The motion passed dot as the assembly moved to the next agenda item, a trade dispute about Nebula. Mining rights June sank back into his seat. The noise of the chamber seemed to fade into a dull roar. He felt Yuna's hand on his arm. They're going to die, June, she said, her eyes shining. They're going to die alone in the dark, and we just voted. June stared at the empty space where the hologram of the Chol world had been. He saw not a planet of rock and lava, but of faces. He saw the careful carvers, the patient singers of stone songs. He heard the ghost of Caver's words. Non-viable. He turned to Yuna. The cold knot in his stomach replaced by a different kind of hardness, a resolve forged in the very fires of humanity's own denied past. "No," he said, his voice so low only she could hear it. "We voted. They decided. But we don't have to agree." He looked at her, and in his eyes she saw not the polished diplomat, but the stubborn, reckless, compassionate spirit of a species that had refused its own grave a dozen times over. "They can deny them, but we don't have to abandon them." The silence of the grand convocation was replaced by the urgent electric hum of Luna's shipyard. Here there was no polished grandeur, only the raw, functional guts of human endeavor. Great Gantes crisscrossed the black sky, their work lights painting bright stripes on the hulls of ships that were more like toolboxes than the elegant vessels of the galactic consensus. Park Min floated near the viewport of his ship, the Steadfast. It was an old, Cantor-class heavy freighter, its design blocky and robust. Its gray hull was scuffed and patched, a testament to decades hauling asteroid ore and colony supplies. Right now, it was being stripped of its internal cargo bays. Min watched as a team in construction exosuits carefully removed heavy plating. "Captain," a voice crackled in his helmet com. It was Li Ji, his chief engineer. Her face, smudged with hydraulic fluid, appeared on a small screen in his visor. "We're getting pushback from the yard foreman again. He says rerouting the primary life support to accommodate hypothetical passengers is a violation of 10 different safety protocols. He's threatening to red tag us." Min sighed, a small cloud of condensation forming on the inside of his helmet. "Tell Foreman Briggs that our permits from the Outer Systems Humanitarian Corps are in order. And remind him that the Steadfast is a privately registered vessel. If he red tags us, we'll just take our business and our credit to the Ceres yards. He'll lose his bonus." G grinned, a flash of white in her grimy face. "Aye, Captain," appealing to his greed. "I like it." The cum clicked off. Min turned back to the view. This was madness. Beautiful, necessary madness. After June's public defiance and the consensus's final verdict, the story had exploded across the human networks. There was outrage, yes, but also something deeper, a painful, collective recognition. The images of the Chol, calmly carving their history as their world tore itself apart, had struck a chord. It echoed old Earth stories of floods, of eruptions, of people clinging to what they loved as the world ended. Donations had poured in. Not from governments Earth's government was issuing careful, diplomatic statements, afraid of jeopardizing their consensus standing, but from people. Miners on Mars, fisher colonists on Europa, software architects in orbital habitats. They sent credit, they sent materials, and they sent themselves. A smaller ship, a nimble courier vessel, docked with a soft clang against the Steadfast's airlock. Soon after, Min felt the vibrations through his boots as someone entered the bay behind him. He turned. It was Kim Tae, the young xenogeologist whose thesis on unstable planetoids had suddenly become the most critical document in the fleet. He was carrying a data slate almost too big for his hands, his eyes wide with a mixture of terror and excitement. "Captain Park?" "Sir?" The final projections from the deep space telescopes. For the Chol homeworld. Min took the slate. The data was a symphony of doom. Graphs showed planetary stress points reaching critical levels. A massive supervolcano on the northern continent was primed to erupt within the next 6 standard months. The tectonic plate underlying their largest settled canyon was shearing apart. "We have less time than we thought," Pei said, his voice trembling slightly. The consensus models were conservative. The end will be violent. Very, very violent. Min handed the slate back. "Then we move faster. Are the resonance translators ready?" Tay nodded eagerly, his fear pushed aside by passion. Yes, sir. Based on Choi Yuna's work, we've built portable units that can convert basic standard into low-frequency vibrations and raid Chul Stone Song back into audio and text. It's crude, but it's a start. We can say hello. We can say we are friends. We can say this way. Good. This way is the most important one, Min said. He pushed off from the viewport, grabbing a handhold. Come on. Let's see how G is doing with our stubborn foreman. As they moved through the ship's spine, now a hive of activity, Min saw the shape of their desperate plan coming together. The Steadfast was the flagship, but it was just one of 17 vessels. There was the Prospect, a converted ice miner that could filter and process atmosphere and water. The Haven, a former hospital ship, its bays being stocked with trauma units and adaptive med pods. There were rugged planetary shuttles, their engines being upgraded for heavy lift in high-gravity, turbulent atmospheres. They were not a navy. They were a toolbox. A jury-rigged, improvised, stubborn toolbox. Back on the bridge, now crowded with newly installed comm stations and holographic projectors. Min found June and Yuna. June looked older. The weight of his diplomatic failure now transformed into the fiercer weight of responsibility. He was no longer a delegate. He was a coordinator, using his contacts to secure supplies and navigate the legal gray zones of an unsanctioned mission. The consensus is calling it humanity's folly, June said, watching a news feed. A Vreen analyst was calmly explaining the mathematical certainty of the mission's failure, the waste of resources, the inevitable tragedy. They are broadcasting their predictions galaxy-wide. Let them, said Yuna. She was focused on her own screen, which displayed the beautiful, maddeningly complex waveforms of Chol Stone Song. It just puts more pressure on EarthGov to condemn us publicly, to make us stop. They're walking a tightrope. They won't stop us, Min said, settling into his worn command chair. It creaked familiarly. They'll wring their hands and call us reckless, but they won't launch interceptors. Because down deep, in the places they don't show on the news feeds, they want us to try. They need us to try. A new alert pinged on the main console. It was from the outer system sensor net. A ship had just exited warp at the edge of the solar system. It was not a human design. Its signature was smooth, organic, elegant. A consensus observer. They're here to watch, G said, coming onto the bridge and wiping her hands on a rag. To get a front row seat to the folly. Min looked at the icon of the alien ship on the screen, a silent, judging eye. He felt not fear, but a cold determination. Then let's give them a show they won't forget. Gee, what's our status? The Steadfast is 80% refit. Life support is extended and reinforced. The fleet reports ready in 5 days. We have enough nutrient paste and recycled water to sustain 5,000 souls for a year, assuming we can supplement with local sources. It's going to be tight, Captain. Very tight. It will be enough, Min said. He looked around the bridge at June's steady resolve, Yuna's focused intensity, Tay's nervous energy, and G's pragmatic grit. We're not going there to offer them a luxury cruise. We're going there to offer a hand out of the fire. That's all. 5 days later, the ragtag fleet assembled at the Lagrange point beyond Luna. 17 ships of varying sizes and shapes, their hulls gleaming dully in the sunlight. There were no grand speeches, no ceremonial fanfare. Earth's government maintained an official silence. On the bridge of the Steadfast, Min took one last look at the blue-green marble of Earth, hanging in the blackness. He thought of the Chul, looking up at their own violent, beautiful sky. All vessels, this is Steadfast, he said, his voice calm on the fleet-wide channel. Form up on my mark. Warp coordinates are locked. Our destination is P787. Our mission is simple, We go, we find them, and we bring them home. Ignore the noise. Trust your crews. Mark. One by one, in a silent, unceremonious procession, the ships powered up their warp drives. Space around their prows twisted and shimmered. Then, like stones dropped into a dark pond, they vanished, leaving only ripples of distorted starlight dot in the observation lounge of the sleek consensus vessel. A Vreen logkeeper recorded the event. Asterisk subject: Human fleet steadfast. Action: departed solar system for denied world P787. Probability of mission success, as per consensus models, 0.03%. Notation: a clear, if tragic, waste of energy. Observation to continue. Asterisk: the galaxy had made its calculation. Humanity, in its beautiful, stubborn folly, had made its choice. The long, quiet journey into the denied dark had begun. The Steadfast shook like a thing possessed. On the bridge, the smooth hum of warp travel was gone, replaced by a deep, grating vibration that made the metal plates of the deck groan. The view screen no longer showed the serene tunnel of faster-than-light travel. It was a chaotic, terrifying portrait of a world ending. P787 filled the screen, but it was not the planet from the sterile holograms of the Grand Convocation. This was raw, violent, and immense. Continents were outlined in fiery orange veins of lava. The atmosphere was a bruised tapestry of ash, lit from within by constant lightning. As they watched, a mountain range on the night side bloomed with a silent, white-hot explosion, spewing molten rock into the void. Atmospheric entry in 3 minutes, shouted Kin Tay from the sensor station. His face was pale in the hellish light from the screen. The turbulence. The models didn't prepare us for this. It's like flying into a continuous earthquake. Captain Park Min gripped the arms of his chair, his knuckles white. Stick to the planned descent corridor. Li Ji, I need every ounce of power to the inertial dampeners. We're a rock, and we have to roll with the punches. Li Ji's voice came back, tight with strain. Dampeners are at 120%, Captain. They were not built for this. We lose a thruster array if we push harder. Understood. Just hold it together, G. Hold it together. The ship plunged into the atmosphere. The shaking became a brutal, pounding series of jolts. Alarms shrieked as the hull temperature soared. Outside the viewports, the world was a roaring orange and gray nightmare. They were dropping toward the coordinates of the largest Chol settlement, a place their maps called the Great Caldera. It was supposed to be one of the last stable regions. The Steadfast burst through a ceiling of black cloud, and the caldera sprawled beneath them. It was a vast, bowl-shaped plain surrounded by sheer cliffs. And it was not stable. A fresh, jagged crack had torn across its floor, steaming and glowing. The Chol settlement was not a city of towers, but of structures carved directly into the canyon walls and the caldera's rim deep. Cave-like homes and meeting halls meant to withstand shaking. Their arrival did not go unnoticed. As the human ships, one by one, fought their way into the turbulent sky above the caldera, figures emerged from the stone. Hundreds of Chol. They stood on ledges and at cave mouths, their sturdy forms silhouetted against the rock. They did not wave. They did not flee. They watched. Get the shuttles ready, Min ordered. And get me Yuna and the translation team on the first one down. The landing was a rough affair on the cracked plane. Kong Laya, the exobiologist, adjusted her environment suit seals, her heart hammering against her ribs. The air outside was thin, hot, and sharp with the smell of sulfur and crushed stone. Next to her, Showa Yuna powered up the large, boxy resonance translator. Its speaker emitted a low, experimental thrum that vibrated up through their boots. A group of Chul approached. They moved with a careful, deliberate grace, their feet seeming to feel the ground as much as walk on it. Their leader was older, his skin a network of fine cracks like weathered granite. His large, dark eyes held no fear, only a deep, weary sorrow and a flicker of cold anger. He carried a long stone staff, which he planted firmly into the ground. Yuna took a deep breath. She keyed a sequence into the translator. A series of low, complex vibrational pulses emanated from it, shaking the dust at their feet. It was the greeting phrase she had devised from deep space recordings. "We come in peace. We are friends from the stars." The Chol elder listened. The crowd behind him went utterly still. After a long moment, he raised his staff and brought it down sharply on a flat section of bedrock. The sound was a clear, ringing crack. In response, the translator's screen lit up, converting the vibration into jagged, translated text. "Liars, sentinels of the empty sky, you denied U.S. GOLIA's breath caught. They know. They know about the consensus." Yuna tried again, her fingers flying over the console. "We are different. We refused the denial. We came to help." The elder struck the stone again, a harder, angrier blow. "Help is a vibration with nitrogen monoxide meaning. Our world is the song. The song is ending. You come to watch the silence. It was a rejection more absolute than any locked door. The Chol began to turn away, retreating toward their cliff homes. Desperation clawed at Laya. They had crossed the stars for this? To be dismissed as spectators. Then, with a sound like the sky tearing, a new quake hit. It was a sharp, violent lurch. A section of the caldera rim a few kilometers away simply collapsed, sending a massive wall of dust and rubble avalanching down. A collective shudder, a visible wave of grief, went through the Chol in the chaos. Laya saw a smaller figure, a young Chol, stumble on a shaking ledge high on the cliff face, dislodged by the tremor. The child tumbled, landing on a lower, unstable scree slope that was still sliding from the collapse. Without thinking, Laya ran. She heard Min shout her name over the combs, but she ignored it. Her suit amplified her strength, but the ground was treacherous, shifting with each aftershock. She scrambled up the loose rock. Her world narrowed to the small, dusty form ahead. A young Chul was trying to stand, one leg bent at a wrong angle. Behind it, the slope continued to slip, threatening to carry it into a deepening fissure. Laya reached it, her suited hands gentle but firm. "I have you," she whispered, knowing it couldn't understand. She scooped the lightweight being up, cradling it against her chest, and half slid. Half ran back down to more solid ground, just as the ledge, where it had fallen, vanished into the dust cloud. She set the child down carefully as other Chal rushed forward. The elder was there, his angry defiance replaced by shock. Laya pointed to the child's leg, then to the emblem on her shoulder, a caduceus, the ancient symbol of medicine. She then pointed back toward the human shuttles and the haven in orbit. The elder stared at her. He looked from the injured child to Laya's face, hidden behind her visor. He made a gesture, and two Chol gently lifted their young one. Then Lei did something Yuna and her translator could not. She fumbled with a sealed pouch on her belt and pulled out a flat, personal data slate. She called up not words, but images. She knelt in the ash, ignoring the tremors, and showed the slate to the elder. She started with a picture of a raging flood on old Earth, people clinging to rooftops. Then a volcano burying a city, a forest burning on a massive scale, a diagram of an asteroid hurtling toward a blue planet, pictures of humans afraid, suffering, losing everything. The elder watched, his dark eyes unblinking. Laya then swiped to new images. Humans in simple boats pulling others from the floodwaters. Humans digging through ash-covered ruins to find survivors. Humans planting new trees in scorched earth. A crude, historical drawing of a rocket of firework against a giant rock. Pushing it away, finally, she brought up a symbol. Famous image from Earth's archives. A hand reaching down from above to clasp another. Hand reaching up from below dot. She pointed to the images of disaster. Then to the shaking ground, the collapsing cliffs, the smoky sky. She pointed to the images of humans helping. Then to herself, to her slate, to the shuttles, to the ships in the angry sky above. She wasn't speaking their language of vibration. She was speaking an older, more universal language. The language of catastrophe. And the language of a stubborn, illogical refusal to surrender to it. The elder was silent for a long time. The only sounds were the wind of a dying world and the deep groans from below. He slowly reached out a 3-fingered hand and touched the image of the clasped hands on the slate. The stone-like skin was warm. He looked up from the slate to Laia's visor, and then past her, to the bulky, inelegant human ships holding steady in the toxic sky. He turned to his people and raised his staff. This time, he did not strike it in anger. He placed it down gently and rubbed the shaft against the stone, creating a long, low, resonant hum that the human translator picked up. The words formed on Yuna's screen. They were not warm, not yet. But the cold anger was gone, replaced by something hard and clear as diamond. You do not come from a place of pity. You come from a place of recognition. He looked back at Laia and gave a slow, deep nod. It was not welcome. It was an acknowledgement. A truce born in the rubble. The door, once sealed in stone, had cracked open. Now the real work, against a ticking geological clock, could begin. Time on the dying world became a single, desperate heartbeat. The humans no longer lived by hours or days, but by the frequency of the quakes. The great caldera, now the nerve center of the impossible evacuation, was a scene of controlled chaos, lit by the harsh glow of portable floodlights and the angry red pulse of the planet's core showing through new fissures. Captain Park Min's voice was a constant, gravelly presence on every com channel. He was no longer just on the Steadfast. He was everywhere. His face, smudged with soot and etched with exhaustion, flickered on screens in the shuttles, in the mining rigs, and in the makeshift medical bays carved into the deepest, most stable caves. Team Alpha. That landing zone is too hot. The vents are opening up. Shift 200 meters east. Use the basalt ridge as a windbreak. Haven, we need another 3 tronopods at Site 4. The last collapse caught a digging team. G, I need more power to the primary lifters. The big stones are next. Li Ji was a ghost in the machine. While others battled the planet, she battled the fraying limits of human technology. In a pressurized tent that shuddered with every tremor, she and a team of engineers from the Prospect jury-rigged systems that were never meant for this. They patched cracked thruster manifolds with Chol-made ceramic seals. They rerouted coolant lines through rock channels cooled by the thin, frigid air. Her hands were a map of small burns and cuts, but her focus was absolute. A Chul artisan, watching her splice 2 incompatible power cables with a sparking welder, had gently placed a smooth, heat-resistant stone tile next to her for insulation. It was the first gift. She used it down in the deepest, oldest cave, the heart of the Chul settlement. A different struggle was taking place. Choi Yuna stood before the stones of memory. They were not mere monuments. They were massive, rectangular monoliths, some 3 stories tall, covered in intricate, beautiful patterns of drilled holes and carved channels. This was their library, their history, their soul. A senior Chol, one of the keepers of song, ran a hand along the patterns, creating a low, sorrowful melody that filled the cavern. Yuna's translator box emitted her careful vibrational question. We must move you. We must move these. The keeper's answering vibration was a shock of grief, so profound it made the humans Chests ache. No, the song is of the stone. The stone is of this place. To move is to kill the song. We will go with our people. But the song must sleep here. It was the one thing the humans had not fully understood. The Chol would leave grudgingly to survive. But asking them to abandon their history was like asking them to cut out their own hearts. The report reached Min on the bridge. He was reviewing lift capacities, the grim math of salvation. They could just fit the Chul population, with minimal supplies, onto the fleet if they used every cubic meter. The stones of memory would require dismantling the Prospect's ice processing plant and 2 of the heavy lift shuttles. It was impossible. The logical choice, the consensus choice, was clear. Min stared at the live feed from the cave, at the sorrowful Chol keepers, at the monolithic stones. He thought of the Vreen's words, "Sentiment is a waste of energy." He thought of Yuna showing images of human history. What was history but sentiment carved into time? He opened the fleet-wide channel. Every human, from mechanic to medic, heard his voice, hoarse but clear. "This is Min. We have a problem. The Chol have stones. Big ones. Their history is carved into them. They won't leave them behind." He paused, letting the impossibility hang in the static-filled air. The models say we don't have the mass budget. The models say we have to choose between their lives and their past. Another pause. A longer one. I'm not making that choice. We didn't come here to save a group of refugees. We came to save a people. And a people is their story. So we make room. We get creative. We strip out every non-essential gram from our ships. We bolt those stones to the hull if we have to. But we are not asking them to become refugees of their own history. That is an order. There was silence on the channel. Then Li Ji's voice, crackling with interference, came through. "Steadfast engineering here. If we dump the auxiliary water tanks from the Prospect and use the Chul's atmospheric condensers on the journey, we gain 15% cargo volume. It'll be thirsty work, but we can do it. Then, the captain of the Haven, we can convert 2 cargo bays on the lower deck. It'll mean triple bunking the patients we've already evacuated, but we'll manage." One by one, the voices came. Not arguing, but solving. Finding the grams, the centimeters, the watts of power. The impossible math began to bend. The final days were a blur of nightmare and miracle. The planet's furious death throes came faster. The sky was now perpetually dark with ash, glowing from below. The great lift shuttles, their engines screaming, hauled the monumental stones of memory from the sacred cave. Using a blend of Chol knowledge of balance and human gravity technology, they were loaded into the gutted holds of the Prospect and secured with a web of carbon nanofiber cables. The last lifts were for the people. Chol families, carrying only small personal carving stones, filed into the shuttles under a rain of hot gray ash. They did not look back with tears. Their eyes were dry and solemn. They looked back to remember Min was on the ground for the final sweep. The caldera was breaking apart, new canyons opening like wounds. He stood by the last shuttle, its engines hot, with Kang Laya and a team of medics. The Chul elder, the one who had first called them liars, approached. He was the last. He paused before entering the shuttle and turned to Min. He placed his hand flat on the hull of the human ship, then on the ground, feeling the terrible vibrations. He looked at Min and made a series of gestures, then pointed upward. Yuna, her face behind a visor streaked with grime, translated via Min's helmet speaker. He says, "Your ship is cold. It has no song, but it has a strong heartbeat. We will listen for it in the new stone." The elder entered the shuttle. Min followed, sealing the hatch. "Pilot, get us out of here, now." The shuttle leaped skyward, fighting through the convective hell of the disintegrating atmosphere. Below, the great caldera, the last haven, folded in on itself as the mantle beneath it finally gave way. A wave of molten rock swallowed the ancient caves, the carving sites, the empty places where the great stones had stood for millennia. On the bridge of the Steadfast, watching the planet's final cataclysm on the main screen, there was no celebration. Only a vast, hollow exhaustion and a quiet awe. The fleet, now ungainly and heavy with its priceless stone cargo, formed up around them. The ships were battered, their hulls scarred by heat and debris, their fuel reserves low. "All vessels report ready for warp," G said. Her voice thin with tiredness, Min looked at the image of the broken world. Now just a cooling, radioactive cinder in the dark. They had taken everything it had left to give. He thought of the cold equations of the consensus, the perfect logic of abandonment. "Set course for the prearranged coordinates," he said. "For New Jiong, let's go home." As the warp drives engaged, plucking the ragged fleet from the edge of the cataclysm, the silent consensus observer vessel, still watching from a safe distance, recorded its final log entry on the mission. Asterisk observation. Human fleet has departed P787. Planetary body has undergone terminal geological collapse. Sensors detect no life signs left on the surface. Mission parameters appear to be a catastrophic failure. The world is dead. Anomaly. Fleet mass signatures are significantly higher than on arrival. They are carrying excess, non-organic material of considerable tonnage. Analysis. Illogical. A severe miscalculation of survival priorities. Conclusion. The folly is complete. End observation. Asterisk, the human ships, heavy with survivors and their carved histories, vanished into the star lines, leaving the dead world and its cold logic behind. The rescue was over. The survival had just begun. The air in the Grand Convocation Chamber was different. A year ago, it had held the sterile quiet of a verdict. Now it buzzed with a low, tense anticipation. Delegate Kim Jun stood again at the human tier, the ancient oak desk solid beneath his hands. He was alone this time. The eyes upon him were not just dismissive, but sharp with a new, wary scrutiny. News, filtered through traitor gossip and long-range scans, had trickled in. The human folly had not ended in a silent, expected failure. Something had happened. Across the chamber, Ambassador Kaver of the Vreen Collective rose. Its segmented body gleamed under the lights. The vibration it emitted was calm, analytical, and utterly damning. "Esteemed delegates," Kavor began. "A matter before us is one of galactic law and precedent. The species known as humanity, in direct defiance of a consensus denial protocol, launched an unauthorized incursion into a system under galactic quarantine. They interfered with a natural, if unfortunate, planetary process. While their emotional motivations are typical of their developmental stage, their actions represent a clear threat to the rule of law that binds our civilizations. We cannot have species acting on impulsive sentiment, risking broader stability. Therefore, the Vreen Collective moves for the imposition of Sector 7 sanctions upon humanity, a restriction on warp technology trade, a suspension of their voting subcommittees, and a formal censure. A ripple of assent moved through the assembly. The logic was, as always, impeccable. Rules were rules. Sentiment could not be allowed to unravel order. June waited for the formalities, for the call for debate. When it came, he rose. He did not press a button for translation enhancement. He simply spoke, his voice carrying in the quiet. Ambassador Kaver speaks of law, of precedent, of risk. He paused, looking not at Kaver, but around at the myriad faces of the galaxy. A year ago, you voted on a number. The resource cost of saving the Chul. You deemed it too high. You were correct. A faint, surprised rustle. Was the human admitting error? You calculated the cost of saving biological entities, June continued. You did not calculate the value of what was saved. You saw a dying rock. We saw a living library. You saw a short-lived species. We saw master geologists, philosophers of deep time. You denied them a future. We refused to abandon their past. He nodded to the protocol officer. With the Chamber's permission, I wish to submit new evidence. A live feed from the planet New Jong. Caver shifted. This is highly irregular. Sentimental imagery has no place. It is not imagery, June interrupted, his voice hardening. It is a report. The central holographic projector flickered to life. But it did not show the desperate, fiery hell of P787. It showed a calm, verdant world. A wide valley with a river running through it. On one side were simple, efficient human structures. On the other, built into the side of a new, stable cliff face, were deep shoal caves dot, and in the center of the valley stood the stones of memory. All of them. Arranged in a great circle, their carved faces cleaned, lit by the gentle light of a new sun. Around them, both Chul and humans moved. But it was not the humans directing. Chul artisans, using tools adapted from human mining lasers, were carefully, expertly, teaching humans how to read the mineral seams in the new cliff, where to build to last 10,000 years. A human engineer presented a schematics pad, and a Chul elder tapped a specific point with a stony finger, creating a resonant hum that the translator subtitled. Stress here, the stone knows, and the feed focused on two figures. One was Choi Yuna, standing beside the Chul elder from the caldera. His name, they now knew, was Granite Song. Granite Song spoke, his vibrations picked up by a sensor and rendered into clear universal standard. The humans asked for nothing. They gave us the sky. We have given them the ear of the stone. The feed showed examples. Chul sonic resonators being used to detect faults in the humans' new fusion reactor foundations. Chul knowledge of pressure and crystallography revolutionizing the colony's mineral extraction, making it zero waste. A joint project where human nanofilaments were being used to repair and preserve the oldest, most delicate of the stones. Yu now spoke. The exchange is not one of technology. It is of perspective. They teach us patience. We teach them that some leaps of faith are worth the fall. The feed ended. The chamber was utterly silent. The calculation had changed. The galaxy had seen the Chul as a drain. They were, in fact, a foundation. Caver recovered first. A charming display of cross-cultural interaction. It does not change the legal violation. The cost of that leap of faith, as you call it, was borne by all in the form of destabilized precedent. The law must be upheld, or it is meaningless. June smiled, a small, tired thing. The law, Ambassador, is what we make it to preserve what we value. You value efficiency. We value something else. He took a deep breath. You asked for a report. Here is the final one. A new feed appeared. This was from the bridge of the Steadfast. Captain Park Min looked older, his face lined but calm. Behind him, on the command screen, was the same view of New Jong. This is Captain Park Min of the independent vessel Steadfast. Our mission is complete. The Chol people are saved. Their knowledge is saved. And in saving them, we have gained more than we lost. He stepped aside, and Li Ji came into view, holding a small, stunningly intricate crystal lattice. This, Ji said, her voice filled with a quiet triumph, is a silica carbide matrix, grown using Chol resonant seeding techniques. It is 10 times stronger than any alloy we have, and a fraction of the mass. It will revolutionize hull construction. The equations for its growth are being transmitted to the Consensus Science Archive, freely. A gift. Kim Tae appeared next, holding a data slate. The Chol understanding of planetary core. Harmonics has given us a predictive model for stellar flare activity with 98% accuracy. This data is also being transmitted, freely, a gift. Finally, Kang Lia stood with a young Chul beside her. The Chul immune system, evolved in a soup of minerals and radiation, has produced unique cellular repair mechanisms. Our joint research has already yielded breakthroughs in radiation sickness treatment. The protocols are being transmitted, freely, a gift. The feed returned to June in the silent, stunned convocation chamber. You deemed them non-viable. A drain. You were wrong. You saw only what they lacked. We saw what they possessed. You offered them the cold peace of oblivion. We offered them a hand. And in return, they are offering the galaxy a new way to see, to build, to heal. The cost you calculated was too high. The return you never calculated is beyond price. He looked directly at the sensor that served as Kaver's primary eye. You can sanction us. You can censure us. You can call us fools and sentimentalists. It will not change what has been done. It will not unsing the songs now being carved into new stone. It will not erase the truth that now echoes in the silence you prescribed. He paused, letting the weight of the gifts, the sheer, illogical success of the folly, hang in the air. The galaxy denied them, June said. His final words simple, clear, and uncheckable. Humanity refused to abandon them. And in doing so, we all gained a future. The vote on sanctions is yours. But the story is already written. June sat down. He did not look at the voting screens now lighting up around the chamber. He looked at the empty space where the hologram had been, and he saw not a political victory, but a valley on a new world, where two peoples who had been left for dead were building something together, their different songs harmonizing into something stronger and entirely new. The galaxy might vote as it wished. It could no longer deny the truth resonating in the stone.